The garage smelled like motor oil and old wood. I pressed the rag against the bandsaw's blade guard, working the rust spots until they disappeared. Through the kitchen window, Rachel's laughter cut through the evening air. Sharp, too bright for a Tuesday night. My name's Michael Lane. I'm 52, and I teach shop at Lincoln High School here in upstate Illinois. I fix broken things for a living. I'm doing it for 28 years. Kids trust me with their projects, their problems, sometimes their secrets. The other teachers, they see the grease under my nails and think that's all there is. They're wrong about that. The PTA banners by our back door caught my eye again. Bake sale boxes stacked 3 high. Rachel's world, always moving, always busy. Always somewhere else when I got home from work. 3 months ago, I slipped on black ice in the school parking lot. Tore something in my shoulder that had a name I couldn't pronounce. Physical therapy twice a week. Doctor's orders to take it slow. You know what happens when you're forced to sit still? You start noticing things you missed before. Like how Rachel's car was never in the driveway when I pulled up anymore. How she'd started putting her phone face down during dinner. How her laugh had changed. I set down the rag and walked over to my workbench. Everything had its place here. 28 years of muscle memory told me exactly where each tool belonged. The adjustable wrench sat crooked in its spot. I picked it up, turned it over in my hands. Someone had used it recently. Someone who didn't know how I kept my tools. Only 2 people had keys to this garage. Me and Dave Kramer, the handyman Rachel hired to fix our gutters last month. The job that somehow stretched into 6 weeks. The kitchen door opened. Rachel stepped onto the back porch, still holding her phone. "Michael, you coming in for dinner?" "In a minute." She went back inside. I heard her tell someone on the phone that she had to go, that she'd talk tomorrow. 20 minutes later, headlights swept across the garage. Zoe's beat-up Honda pulled into the driveway. My daughter climbed out, moving like someone carrying something heavy. She found me still at the workbench, organizing tools that were already organized. "Dad?" I looked up. Her face was pale. Phone clutched in her hand like it might bite her. "I found something," she said. "On Mom's phone. She left it on the counter when she went upstairs." The way she said it, I already knew. But I listened anyway. Text messages between Rachel and Dave. Not about gutters. Not about home repairs. About hotel rooms, about when I'd be at physical therapy, about how much they missed each other. I set down the wrench I'd been holding, put it back in its proper place. "Don't do anything yet," I told her. Zoe stared at me. "Dad, did you hear what I just—" "I heard you." She left for her apartment near campus that night. Didn't say goodbye to her mother. I stayed in the garage until past midnight, cleaning tools that were already clean. The betrayal sat under my skin like a splinter. Not new, just finally impossible to ignore. But here's the thing about working with your hands for 3 decades. You learn patience. You learn that the right pressure, applied at the right time, can fix almost anything. Or break it completely. I didn't confront Rachel that night. Didn't slam doors or demand explanations. I just put away my tools, turned off the lights, and went to bed. Some machines give you warning signs before they fail. Others run smooth right up until they don't. Rachel was still laughing on the phone when I walked past the kitchen, still planning her busy tomorrow. She had no idea I'd already started planning mine. 3 days later, I found myself in my shop at 2 a.m., working on an old dining room chair by the light of a single bulb. The leg had snapped clean through, but when I examined the break, I could see the truth. The wood had split months ago, maybe years. Just a hairline crack, invisible until the right pressure came along. Some breaks happen all at once, others take their time. I mixed wood glue on a scrap piece of plywood, thinking about pressure and time and things that look solid from the outside. That's when I noticed the manila folder on my workbench. Rachel's PTA stuff. Receipts and invoices she'd asked me to look over last week, back when I still believed her requests were innocent. Why was I looking at bills for workshop supplies I'd never ordered? Sandpaper. Router bits. A compound miter saw that definitely wasn't sitting in my classroom. According to these receipts, the PTA had spent $3,000 on my shop in the past 2 months. I'd been teaching for 28 years. You'd think I wouldn't notice a new miter saw? The next morning, I called Zoe, asked her about her tuition payment for spring semester. Mom said there's a delay at the bank, she told me. Something about the account transfer. She said it'll be sorted by next week. Which bank? Silence on the other end. Then, why are you asking? Just curious. But I wasn't curious anymore. I was getting that feeling you get when a student's project doesn't match their skill level, when the work's too good, or the measurements too perfect, or the signature looks wrong. Sunday morning I drove to the school, told Rachel I needed to pick up some lesson plans. The parking lot was empty except for my truck. Perfect. Lincoln High keeps a log of everyone who enters the building after hours. Security policy. I'd signed it plenty of times for parent conferences or when I needed to prep for Monday morning. I flipped through 3 months of entries. There was my signature. All right, except I hadn't been at school on half those dates. February 12th, February 19th, March 3rd, March 10th, every Tuesday and Thursday, right when I was at physical therapy. The handwriting wasn't even close to mine. Monday morning, I stopped by the main office before first period. Carmen Rodriguez had been the school secretary for 15 years. Nothing happened at Lincoln without her knowing about it. Michael, how's the shoulder? Getting there. Hey, Carmen, you handle the PTA reimbursements, right? She looked up from her computer. Some of them? Why? Rachel mentioned something about workshop supplies. Big purchase. Just wanted to make sure everything looked right on your end. Carmen's expression shifted. She glanced around the office, then lowered her voice. Can I be honest with you? I nodded. Some of these receipts don't add up. The amounts, the vendors, I've been flagging them for Mrs. Patterson, but... She shrugged. PTA business is PTA business, you know. What kind of amounts are we talking about? Enough to matter? Your wife's been very active with the purchasing lately. That afternoon, I sat in my truck outside the bank. Zoe's college account was joint with Rachel's name on it. Took me 20 minutes to get the truth out of the teller. No delayed transfer, no bank error. The money had been moved, transferred out in 3 separate withdrawals over the past month, all authorized by Rachel. How do you steal from your own daughter's future and sleep at night? But here's what really got to me. It wasn't just the affair anymore. It wasn't even the money. They'd used my name, my reputation, my workshop. For 28 years, I'd built something at that school. Trust with my students, respect from the parents who sent their kids to learn from me, a legacy that mattered. Rachel and Dave had turned it into their personal ATM. Tuesday evening, I made my move. Told Rachel I'd forgotten my gradebook at school and needed to grab it. The security office was empty. The surveillance system runs automatically, but someone has to know how to access the footage. Lucky for me, I'd helped install the cameras 2 summers ago when the district upgraded. February 12th, 8:47 p.m., the workshop door opens. Rachel walks in first. Dave follows, carrying a toolbox that doesn't belong to him. They're not there to fix anything. They load supplies into boxes. Dave checks something on his phone, shows it to Rachel. She nods. March 3rd, 9:15 p.m., same routine. This time they're wheeling out a cart loaded with equipment I'd inventoried just the week before. March 10th. Rachel's holding an envelope thick with cash while Dave loads the last box into his truck. I made copies of everything. Hard copies, digital files, cloud storage, the whole 9 yards. You work with tools long enough, you learn to document everything. Measurements, materials, process. Because when something goes wrong, you need proof of what you built and how you built it. That night, I sat in my garage with the evidence spread across my workbench. Photos, bank statements, receipts, security footage. The affair was personal. This was bigger. They hadn't just betrayed me. They'd stolen from parents who trusted the PTA with their donations, from kids who deserved better equipment for their education, for my daughter's future. And they'd done it using my name, my reputation, my life's work as cover. Some people think revenge is about anger, about losing control. They're wrong. Real revenge is about patience, about seeing the whole picture, about understanding exactly how much pressure to apply, and where, and when. I closed the folder and put it in my safe. Tomorrow I'd start building something new. Rachel was still on the phone when I came inside, still laughing, still planning her busy week. She had no idea that her time was almost up. The belt sander hummed steady in my hands, smoothing the oak tabletop grain by grain. Fourth period had ended 10 minutes ago, but I kept working. Down the hall, Rachel's voice carried from the multi-purpose room. PTA meeting in session, her laugh echoed off the empty lockers. Bright, confident, completely unaware. Perfect timing. I set down the sander and pulled out my phone. The email to Dr. Patterson, the superintendent, was already drafted. Professional, concerned, no accusations, just observations. Dear Dr. Patterson, I have noticed some irregularities with after-hours building access that may pose security and liability concerns for the district. I attached the surveillance footage, hit send. The workshop felt different now, like I was finally working with tools that belonged to me again. 20 minutes later, I walked into the main office with a folder thick with documentation. Carmen looked up from her computer. Michael, what brings you by? Got a few minutes to look at something? I spread the PTA purchase logs across her desk, supply receipts on one side, actual workshop inventory on the other. Carmen's eyes widened as she compared the lists. This router bit set, I pointed to a receipt, says we bought it February 15th. But I inventoried everything that week. Never saw it. And this miter saw? $3,000 worth of equipment that doesn't exist. Carmen leaned back in her chair. Michael, this is... I know what it is. She gathered the papers carefully. I need to document this properly. Flag it for the board review. Do what you need to do. But I wasn't done yet. My next stop was the security office. Jim Martinez had been head of maintenance for 12 years. Good guy. Thorough worker. Jim, I need to update the access protocols for the workshop. He looked up from his clipboard. Something wrong? Just being cautious. Had some tools go missing recently. Wanted to tighten things up. Makes sense. Which cards need to be deactivated? I handed him a list. Rachel's name at the top. Dave's right below it. Security upgrade, I explained. New policy from administration. Jim shrugged and made the changes in his system. Done. Those cards won't work after tonight. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it. 2 days later, Carmen knocked on my classroom door during lunch. Michael? That reporter I mentioned? Sandy Walsh from the Tribune? She wants to know more about the PTA finances. I looked up from the cabinet I was organizing. What did you tell her? Nothing directly, but someone sent her an anonymous tip about missing funds. She's been asking questions around town. Carmen's expression was careful, neutral, but her eyes said she knew exactly who'd made that call. Community deserves to know where their donations go, I said. That's what I figured you'd say. That afternoon I noticed Dave's truck wasn't in the school parking lot. First time all month he'd missed work without calling in. Smart move, too late but smart. Wednesday morning brought the first crack in Rachel's foundation. She came downstairs looking rattled, phone pressed to her ear. No, I understand your concern, but the funds are properly allocated. Yes, Mrs. Chen, I can provide documentation. She hung up and immediately dialed another number. Dave, pick up. We need to talk. But Dave wasn't picking up anymore. Over the next few days, the questions multiplied. Parents wanted answers about fundraiser money, the bake sale proceeds, donations that seemed to disappear into thin air. Rachel's confident laugh grew strained, sharp edges showing through. Friday evening, Sandy Walsh's story broke online. Questions raised about local PTA fund management. No names yet, but enough details to start conversations. That's when things got interesting. Sandy called me Saturday morning. Professional tone, but there was excitement underneath. Mr. Lane, I'm working on a follow-up story about the PTA finances. Found some unusual online listings that might interest you. What kind of listings? Workshop equipment being sold for cash. Posted from an email address registered to someone involved in the PTA. Router bits, sanders, even a compound miter saw. My grip tightened on the phone. Is that right? The listing showed the equipment sold over the past 3 months. Matches up with purchase dates in the PTA records. Funny thing is, the seller's email, it belongs to your wife. There it was, the final piece falling into place. They hadn't just stolen the equipment, they'd sold it. Turned my workshop inventory into their personal side business. How long had they been planning this? How much had they taken while I was laid up in physical therapy, trusting them to handle things properly? That's very interesting, I told Sandy. You should probably share that information with the school district. Already planning to. Monday morning, I changed the locks on my workshop. Every door, every cabinet, every storage room. When my first period students arrived, I had an explanation ready. Safety upgrade, guys. Administration wants better security after some equipment went missing from other buildings. Nobody questioned it. Why would they? I was just the shop teacher, looking out for my students like I always did. But here's what I realized, standing in my newly secured workshop. This was never really about the money. It was about respect, about trust, about the difference between people who build things and people who take them apart. For 28 years, I'd taught kids that honest work matters, that craftsmanship has value, that your reputation is the one tool you can never replace once it's broken. Rachel and Dave had tried to break mine. Now it was my turn to show them what happens when you mess with someone who really knows how to use his tools. The walls were closing in around them. Phone calls from angry parents, questions from reporters, access cards that suddenly didn't work, and they still had no idea who was tightening the screws. That afternoon, I organized my newly secured workshop with the satisfaction of a man who'd finally put everything back where it belonged. Some repairs take time, some require patience. But the best ones, the ones that really last, those are worth waiting for. The school board meeting felt like a funeral. Principal Davidson stood behind the podium, reading from a prepared statement while fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Rachel sat in the third row, hands clenched tight in her lap. I counted maybe 40 parents scattered through the room, everyone staring straight ahead, nobody making eye contact. The district has uncovered evidence of financial irregularities involving PTA funds and unauthorized access to school property, Davidson read. His voice carried no emotion, just facts. Cold, hard facts. I sat in the back corner, arms crossed, watching Rachel's shoulders grow more rigid with every word. She hadn't seen me come in, hadn't looked anywhere but at her hands since the meeting started. Davidson continued. Over the past 3 months, approximately $12,000 in PTA donations were misappropriated through fraudulent purchase orders and unauthorized sale of school equipment. A murmur ran through the room. 12,000, more than I'd calculated. The individuals involved gained access to school facilities after hours using forged signatures and stolen access credentials. Security footage confirms these violations occurred multiple times between February and March. Rachel's head snapped up. Her eyes found me in the back row for just a second before she looked away. Did she finally understand? Did she realize who'd been pulling the strings? Board member Patricia Wells took over, reading from a thick folder. Evidence includes surveillance video, bank records, and online sales listings tied to personal email accounts. The equipment in question was purchased with PTA funds designated for student programs. Someone in the crowd stood up. Sarah Chen, mother of 2 kids, in my advanced woodworking class. Are you saying someone stole money meant for our children's education? That's exactly what we're saying, Wells replied. Rachel finally spoke. Her voice came out smaller than I'd heard it in years. There's been a mistake. I can explain the purchases. Everything was authorized through proper channels. Wells looked up from her folder. Mrs. Lane, we have video evidence of you and Mr. David Kramer removing equipment from the workshop at 9:47 p.m. on March 10th. Equipment that was subsequently sold online for cash. The items needed maintenance. Mrs. Lane. Davidson's voice cut through her stammering. The evidence is comprehensive. We're not here to debate facts. The room went dead quiet. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to stop humming. By Thursday morning, the story had made the Tribune's front page. PTA president under investigation for fund misappropriation. Rachel's photo from last year's bake sale fundraiser looked different now. The same smile, but colder somehow. Like looking at a stranger. I watched from my workshop window as parents dropped their kids off for school. Conversation stopped when Rachel's car pulled into the lot. People found reasons to look the other way. Mrs. Patterson, who'd always chatted with Rachel about fundraising ideas, suddenly became very interested in her phone. The Hendersons, who'd hosted Rachel for book club just last month, walked their daughter to the building without so much as a glance toward the parking lot. Small-town justice is quiet, but it's thorough. Friday afternoon, Sandy Walsh called again. Mr. Lane. Got an update on the story. David Kramer's been named as a co-conspirator. Thought you'd want to know. Is that right? Yeah, but here's the interesting part. Nobody can find him. Packed up his apartment Wednesday night. Landlord says he left no forwarding address. I wasn't surprised. Dave was always good at disappearing when things got complicated. Probably halfway to another state by now, looking for another small town with another trusting family to exploit. The irony wasn't lost on me. Rachel had trusted him too. Meanwhile, I kept teaching. Kids still needed to learn how to measure twice and cut once, how to respect their tools, how to build something that would last. Funny thing happened though. Other teachers started stopping by my workshop more often. Carmen brought me coffee Tuesday morning. Jim Martinez asked my opinion on the new security protocols. For 28 years, I'd been just the shop teacher. Now people remembered why that mattered. Monday morning brought the final blow. District officials filed a formal police report. 3 felony counts: theft, fraud, misuse of public funds. Rachel was quietly removed from all PTA positions. No ceremony, no fanfare. Just an email to parents explaining that leadership changes were necessary. That afternoon, I walked through the main lobby on my way to the parking lot. The wooden plaque that had hung next to the trophy case for 3 years was gone. Rachel Lane, PTA president, 2022 to 2025. She'd had it made at the local trophy shop, paid for it herself, insisted they use real oak, not that cheap composite stuff. Now the wall showed just a faint outline where it used to hang, clean paint inside a rectangle of dust. Sometimes the most powerful statement is silence. I stopped walking and stared at that empty space. All those fundraisers, all those bake sales, all those bright smiles and confident laughs, reduced to nothing but a shadow on the wall. I thought about the parents who'd trusted her with their donations, the kids who deserved better equipment for their education, my daughter's college fund that she'd pillaged without a second thought. The evidence had spoken for itself. The system had worked exactly like it was supposed to. I hadn't said a word at any meeting, hadn't accused anyone of anything, hadn't even raised my voice. Just documented what I found and let the truth do the heavy lifting. Standing there in the empty lobby, I realized something I hadn't expected. I didn't feel angry anymore. Didn't feel betrayed or bitter or vengeful. I felt satisfied, like a craftsman who'd just finished a job done right. Clean lines, square corners, built to last. The work was almost complete. Saturday morning came quiet and clean. Sunlight cut through the workshop dust, highlighting every mote floating in the still air. I worked alone, wiping down each tool with an oiled rag. Every wrench back in its outline on the pegboard, every chisel sharp and properly stored. The way it should be. The way it had always been, before. In the small drawer beneath my workbench, I found Rachel's old PTA volunteer badge. The plastic clip was broken, the photo faded. 3 years of smiling at school events, organizing fundraisers, pretending to care. I dropped it in the drawer and turned the lock. The tiny key went into my oldest toolbox, the red Craftsman I'd bought as an apprentice 30 years ago. Some things deserve to be forgotten. The broken dining room chair sat clamped in my vise, wood glue still drying from last week's repair. I'd almost thrown it away after the legs snapped, but brakes can be fixed if you know what you're doing. I ran my finger along the mended crack, stronger now than it had been before. Footsteps on the gravel outside. Zoe appeared in the doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee and wearing the same work boots I'd bought her in high school. Thought you might need this. We didn't talk about Rachel. Didn't talk about the investigation or the newspaper stories or what would happen next. Instead, we worked. An old garden bench needed new slats. Nothing complicated, just measuring, cutting, sanding. Father and daughter working side by side like we had when she was 12 and wanted to build a treehouse. Trust rebuilt, one careful cut at a time. When the bench was finished, Zoe ran her hand along the smooth wood. "Dad?" I looked up. "Thank you." She didn't specify for what. Didn't need to. Sunday afternoon I drove to the school. The parking lot was empty, the building locked up tight, but I had keys. Inside, the hallways felt different. Smaller somehow. Less like the place where I'd spent half my life and more like just another building. I stopped at the main lobby. The empty space where Rachel's plaque used to hang looked smaller too. Just a rectangle of clean paint surrounded by dust. I touched the wall once, felt nothing but drywall and old paint. Then I walked away. Back in my truck, I sat for a moment, watching the afternoon light fade across the school's brick facade. Lincoln High, where I'd taught thousands of kids, the difference between work done right and work done fast. Where I'd learned that sometimes the most important lessons happen outside the classroom. The engine turned over on the first try. It always did. Regular maintenance, quality parts, proper care. I drove home through streets I'd known for 30 years. Past houses where my former students lived with families of their own. Past the hardware store where I bought my supplies. Past the diner where teachers gathered Friday afternoons to complain about administration and dream about retirement. Nothing had changed, everything had changed. At home, I parked in the driveway and walked around to the backyard. The garage door was closed, my tools secure behind new locks. I stood there as the sun touched the horizon, hands steady at my sides. No shaking, no anger, no regret. Just the quiet satisfaction of a job completed exactly the way it needed to be done. Inside the house, the phone rang twice and stopped. Probably a reporter wanting a statement or a neighbor looking for gossip. It didn't matter. I had work to do tomorrow, students to teach, projects to finish, a reputation to maintain. Behind me, the garage stood solid and secure, my tools in their proper places, my workshop ready for whatever came next. Some people think revenge is loud, think it requires speeches or confrontations or dramatic gestures. They're wrong. Real revenge is quiet, patient, built to last. Just like everything else worth doing, right?